Hello, my dears. Daniela here, and you are listening to episode number 44 of the Spa Marketing Made Easy podcast. Now, in this episode, I have decided to bring back one of my very favorite guests, Mr. Adam Chatterley. He is an amazing spa business consultant. I call him the spa metrics man. But I feel like there's a lot of resistance, a lot of fear, a lot of people, estheticians and spa industry professionals who look at themselves not as numbers people. And I wanted to kind of shed some light on that, squash the fear. So, I thought Adam is the best person to bring in for this conversation. And you guys, you are not alone if you feel like you're not a numbers person. It's, spreadsheets, all of that kind of stuff. I get that that's not like the super fun part of business. And when you get into aesthetics, you dream about, helping people feel good, helping them relax, clearing their skin, building their confidence, and all of these kind of wonderful things that we get to do as estheticians. But in order to do more of that, you have to understand the health of your business, and you understand that through looking at your numbers. So this is a really, really important thing to grasp. Just go in baby steps. Adam shares in this interview some amazing tips. Plus, he's got a free download for you guys that basically is a spreadsheet that you can enter all of your metrics into and use yourself. So he's done a lot of the legwork for you. So have a listen, enjoy, and don't forget to download that spreadsheet at the end. All right, Mr. Adam Chatterley, the spa metrics man, is here. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me again. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I noticed when I was doing a launch for Spa Retail Rockstar a little while ago, one of the big things that kept coming up when we were doing our Facebook Lives and when we were having these conversations was so many estheticians are fearful around KPIs, around metrics, around numbers, and they let that fear stop them in their tracks.
Yeah.
And when I saw that and realized that, I was like, all right, I've got to have Adam on the podcast again because you are the metrics man. So I wanted to bring you on to really just kind of shed some more light on this topic and help people understand metrics, what they should be measuring, what KPIs are, which is essentially just a fancy term for, so key performance indicators. So why don't you go ahead and just kind of tell everyone what these are and why we should be measuring them.
Okay, cool. So thanks for that. And what a terrible nickname, Metrics Man. I don't know. It's the worst superhero in the world. But yes, that is where I seem to be. And it's because I love numbers. I think it's numbers to me are something because they're not subjective. They are either, they're kind of facts. So it's something that you can really base decisions on. And that's one of the reasons why I kind of talk so much about KPIs and try and educate people in that way. So to demystify them a little bit, if you think of your business journey as any other journey that you might take, you're going to need a map. You're going to need some sort of sat nav. You're going to need to know where you're going. So if you think of sort of your rough business plan as your destination, that's where you're trying to get to. The journey that you're on, you're going to need some map, but you're going to need to know where you're starting from right now. So really, all a performance indicator is, or a key performance indicator or a business metric, all it is it's just something that's telling you kind of categorically and based on fact where you are right now versus where you want to get to, and the measuring of those performance indicators along the way is basically the route that you're going to take. And that's really all a KPI or a performance indicator or a metric or anything like that is. It's not anything complicated. It can be a very, very simple number. But one of the things that I try to explain to people is it's not just one set of numbers. It's not the same set of numbers that every business should be measuring. If you're just starting out, the numbers that you should be focusing on are maybe different to a spa that's been in business for, say, 10 years and is doing well, but maybe has hit a bit of a bump and needs to refocus and work on growing their business.
Let's talk about that for a second, because that is something that came up that I've heard estheticians say is like, hey, I'm just starting out. I don't even have the data to track. I don't even know what to look at. And it does make sense that, like, obviously someone who maybe has been in the business for 10 years would be looking at different metrics. So what would you look at for someone who is just starting out, or maybe in their first year of business? What do you think the most important things to measure are? And a follow-up question is, the same thing for someone in 10 years in their spa.
Okay. So again, it does kind of depend even on the situation again. So if you've just started out, okay, you're going to be wanting to focus on things like the number of clients you're seeing in a day. Really basic stuff like that. So even if on a daily basis, you just track, okay, the number of clients you're seeing in a day, or the amount of revenue you're bringing in each day or each week. And at least then week on week, you can start to see improvement or not, and then you can adjust accordingly. Another thing that I always explain to people is it's important to know kind of, even in a short-term way you're trying to get to, because you could measure all kinds of things as a new business. You could measure, sounds silly, but you could measure how many times your phone rings. That's sort of an indicator of how busy you are, but it doesn't actually affect your revenue in any way. So the better thing to measure there would be number of clients, amount of revenue, amount of retail sales that you're making, these kind of things. So when you're starting out, probably, I'm guessing a lot of people start out on their own. So you're really only measuring your own stats. As soon as you start to have a team, that's when you need to start getting a bit more creative, looking at measuring things as percentages, because that means you can then compare members of staff who maybe work different hours, get paid different pay rates, all these kind of things. I'll explain a bit more about that in a second.
Let me stop you right there, though, because you said that when you get a team, you measure in percentages. So are you not measuring in percentages as a solo esthetician?
I always would.
Okay, because I do too. I was just like...
Yeah. But I find if people are working on their own and they're not kind of, maybe they don't get as excited about numbers as I do, and clearly you do, percentages may actually confuse things. So if it's just you, if you're only comparing yourself with yourself, then you're actually fine to work in sort of fixed numbers, revenue terms, those kind of things. But yeah, as soon as you start to kind of want to really compare larger periods of time or compare yourself with other people, that's when you need to start looking at percentages.
Okay. But if they really want to be VIP and really do it right, they should do percentages from the beginning.
Yeah, from day one. And I do say to people, even if you're starting out, even if you've got all the millions of things you're doing from day one of opening your own clinic or spa or salon, do put some time in there to start tracking some numbers. Because if you start doing it from day one, it will become a normal thing for you, and you'll just keep doing it. It will never seem like a chore. It will never be sort of 6 months in and you think, oh, I really should have worked out, where I've come from, what I've improved on, and then you'll have to go back and figure out all your numbers. So if you start doing it from day one, just set aside 5 minutes a week. Shouldn't take a long time. That's another thing as well. Measuring your KPI should never be a huge sit down, gear yourself up to it task. It should be something simple, easily measurable, easily trackable. If it's not, you're measuring the wrong things, to be perfectly honest. So you should have, say, a set of 7 very easy to get hold of figures that you can hopefully then put into ideally a spreadsheet, because that can obviously help you work out things and save you a lot of time if you're working it out week on week as well. So put those key numbers in there. That should then be able to spit you back out those percentages, because it will work them out for you. And you can then just measure your performance over a period of time.
Yeah, I always recommend a spreadsheet and having that already created, because a lot of people will say, well, I have the metrics in my spa software. And that's great. And that's where you should pull the data from.
Sure.
But to have it all in a spreadsheet that you can look at next to one another and see the growth and see the changes, if you're doing that, I always recommend doing it as part of your opening or closing procedure. And just entering, part of what you do is enter the numbers in for the day in the spreadsheet, which should, again, literally take 5 minutes.
Yep.
But I do recommend taking a little bit of time at the end of the month or week or whatever makes the most sense to look at it and try and understand so you can see
Absolutely.
opportunities in your business, because numbers don't
Exactly.
lie.
No,
Right.
and that is the point of doing this. It should be easily trackable on a daily or a weekly basis. But yeah, just tracking them, just writing them down, just putting them in a spreadsheet, that's not really the point. I mean, it's a good start, but the whole point is that occasionally, monthly at a minimum, you are looking at these things and just looking to see what it's telling you. Even if it's purely over time, you start to see, okay, well, my client retention levels are dropping for some reason. I wonder why that could be. My average spend per visit is dropping or increasing. I wonder why that could be. Because it's going to give you insights into your business that you're not necessarily going to notice just from working in your business. At the end of the day, we're all so close to it, we don't notice these things. So having those numbers on there, like you say, they don't lie. They're not subjective. They're not emotional. They don't have a good day or a bad day. They are just facts. So that will tell you what's been going on in your business. It can, as well show you opportunities for things that can happen in your business, or that you could change up, or that you could swap around.
One of the most sad things that I see is estheticians or spa owners who are so focused on revenue, and it's like revenue. And every year their revenue is going up and up and up, and they're super excited, and they're like, yes, I'm doing this, or I finally hit 6 figures, or whatever their goal is. Yep. But they haven't measured anything else. And so they're not measuring profitability, or they're not measuring, it's like they're not raising their prices every year, yep. So their profit margin is shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go out of business. But I didn't even realize it because my revenue was going up and up and up. And exactly. You don't realize that your business can be slowly like slipping away and dying, even if your revenue is increasing, know? So it's something that it's so crucial to be able to look at these numbers.
And a classic one I see there, and I see that as well. I see businesses that are year on year appearing to make more money, but when we actually start to dive into the figures, we see that their client retention rates are just dropping and dropping. So they're having to bring in more and more and more new clients and spend more and more and more on advertising and marketing to keep those clients coming in. Whereas if they just focused on the fact that their client retentions were starting to drop, maybe 6 months ago, and they've gone, oh, hang on, we're starting to not get clients back as often. If they'd focused on that, it would have cost them a lot less money. Potentially they'd made less money, but they would have made more overall because they weren't having to spend that money on advertising and marketing and Facebook ads and all those kind of things.
Yeah, it's a long game for sure.
Definitely.
For sure. So, all right. So let's finish that second part of the question. What metrics are you going to have someone who is owned a spa for 10 years or a more established business?
Sure. Okay. So again, this is going to depend a little bit on what you're trying to do in your business. So if you've noticed some sort of issue, then you can use the KPIs to sort of track and improve those things. So if I give you more of an example of how I work out what to track with a business that's been in business for a while, that haven't tracked anything and don't really know where to start. So I sort of take them through a quick kind of 5-point tips list, if that's okay. And if it's all right with you, I'll just quickly go through those now.
Yeah.
So first of all, keep it really simple. I always say measure a maximum of 7 KPIs at any one time. Okay, and remember, a KPI is just a number. It's something that you're tracking that roughly indicates what's going on in your business. Second thing is to measure the first things first. So I say track 7 KPIs that you think are important, but only ever target 2 of them. So an example here might be, let's say, so it's a spa that's been in business for 10 years and they want to increase their average client spend, for example, or they want to make more money but work less. So there's a couple of ways of doing this. Obviously, one of them is to kind of get more out of the clients that you're already bringing in. So that would be to target their average client spend or the number of times those clients visit you each year or something like that. So you figure out what the thing is that you actually want to improve and you measure that as a KPI. And then that's the one that you target at any one point. Trying to target too many will just confuse the situation. It will potentially, one will contradict the other. So you should never try to sort of raise too many figures at the same time. Number 3 is to have a procedure and stick to it. So like we said a minute ago, it should be something that's simple. The numbers that you are actually entering into your spreadsheet should be easy to get. They should be things like your revenue. It should be number of clients per day. It should be number of repeat clients, how many times clients are coming back. They're easy things that you can find out, ideally from your software, but if you're not using software, even from just an appointment book itself. Number 4 is software will obviously help. I never tend to rely on the reports from software to get my KPIs, because I find software is always written for a very generic reason. It's written to appeal to the vast majority of spas or clinics or salons. So they're never quite going to give you the figures that you want the way you want them. So I would always say get your base figures from there, but don't just use one report and kind of make that your KPIs. Always make sure you're focusing on ones that apply to you. And then the 5th thing is to understand that very small things can have a really big effect. And an example I always use here is, okay, let's say you have a facial that costs $80 and it's quite popular. Okay. So you're tracking this on your sheet and you're seeing that on average, you're doing 2 or 3 of these facials on average per day. Okay. Let's say you measure this and you realize that, okay, this is a popular treatment. It seems to be popular at the moment. Let's kind of put a bit of marketing behind this. Let's see what we can do with this. Even if you just did an extra 2 facials per week, that would increase your annual revenue by $12,000. Wow. And then if you looked at that again and went, well, actually it is so popular, perhaps we could just raise the price slightly. So even if you just raise the price by $5 and you did those extra 2 facials a week, that would actually bring in an extra just over $15,000 a year for very, very small changes. So by having these figures in a spreadsheet and seeing what they're actually doing on a daily and weekly basis, you can figure out these very small tweaks you can make to your business that ultimately will make these huge changes.
I see that a lot with upgrades too. You know, it's so easy to do an upgrade for something that I always did when I was practicing was I did hydrofacials. Mm-hmm. So like in my sleep, I did like probably 5 or 6 a day. I was just going boom, 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 boom. And I offered $100 add-on to do the hands. And it was just, so the hands are something that, especially in the winter, you know, it's like your hands are dry. People never think about them, but like it makes such a difference. And it does not take extra time. So if you're adding $100, but you still can keep that same time block, that's bringing in, I mean, even if only one person does that, that's a huge amount of revenue that you can bring in. And you can easily, it's such an easy add-on just to ask whether it's the hands, whether you want to do a mask, whether you want to do, you know, adding the neck, you know, figure out what is a simple add-on and use that to, exactly like you said, increase your average spend, increase, you know, it's like you're not having to reinvent the wheel. It's like figuring out what is going to benefit the clients that you're seeing and making that offer to them.
Absolutely. And it's knowing what's those popular treatments. You know, don't make your life more difficult than it needs to be. Market your most popular treatments, the ones that make you the most money, and you will reap the benefits the most quickly, rather than just trying to market everything you do and hoping that, you know, one of those actually brings in a treatment. Focus on the ones that are going to, you know, that are already popular, already bringing people in, and then you're already talking to people who want the thing that it is you're selling. So kind of going back to the question, what would I measure? It does depend on the salon and the journey and where they're at and what they're trying to achieve. So I think that is actually one of the hardest things about KPIs is figuring out what it is that you should be measuring. But having said that, there are 8 KPIs that I feel most salons would benefit from measuring, spas, clinics would benefit from measuring. If you'd like me to share. And those are. I wondered. So number 1, and this is the one that I would measure. Basically, every single service business in the world should measure this. And this is essentially, I call it therapist utilization. I don't know if it's maybe got a different term over in the US, but basically this is how busy you and or your team are actually earning money. So it's not how many hours that you're working in a week or how many hours you are paying a member of staff for in a week. It's how many hours they're actually generating revenue performing treatments. And the way to work this out is you basically take the amount of time that you are booked in performing treatments or services, and then you divide that by the total number of hours that you're working, then you multiply it by 100 and it will give you a percentage. Now, going back to when we were talking about percentages, the reason we do things as percentages is so that you can compare different members of staff with each other. So if you've got different members of staff who work different amount of hours in a week, by having a percentage, it will allow you to compare one with the other evenly.
Apples to apples.
Apples to apples, that's exactly it, yeah. So this is one that I would always measure, and it's a really interesting figure. You will never, ever, ever get 100% because you've always got bits of admin to do. You've got time that you're not going to be able to fill up with treatments and earning money. But you want to be getting this as high as possible. And you want all of your staff, if you have staff, you want everyone kind of operating on the same level. It's not fair if someone's kind of bringing in, hitting 80% utilization all the time, and then you've got another member of staff who's down around 60% utilization, unless they have other tasks that they're doing, like they're specifically doing stock takes or admin work or something like that. But this is a figure that I would always, always, always track. And because if you're doing this week on week, you'll always see if someone starts to drop off. And that can be an indication of all kinds of things: an unhappy member of staff, a staff that's struggling with a new treatment, training needs, all sorts of things. But this is just something I would always measure because it's vital for your business, and it can reveal so many things over time, comparing, even the same member of staff with themselves the previous week or one member of staff with another. So that's therapist utilization. Number 2 is retail to treatment conversion, which I know is something that you will absolutely back me up on here. And this is basically how much retail product you're selling versus the amount of money that you're bringing in treatments and services. And you'll get wildly varying suggestions as to what you should be aiming for here. And almost that is obviously important, but it's secondary to being able to measure it and make sure you're tracking it and comparing one member of staff with another, or performance week on week.
Yeah. So here in the States, it's the average in a medical spa is 5 to 7%.
Yep.
For the spa.
Yep.
But there are these superstars, there are these businesses that are doing amazing. And I have personally worked with estheticians in a medical environment that are doing almost 200% retail to service.
That's amazing.
It's possible.
Yeah.
But it's something that, you have to put work in, but it's one of those huge areas of opportunity in spa businesses, I feel.
And you'll always get excuses from people. Oh, we work in a hotel spa. It's different. People don't want to spend money. We work in a day spa that's a long way from everywhere and they don't want to spend money. You'll always get these excuses. But, and this is one place where I have a lot of visibility on overall industry statistics. I actually run the benchmarking system for all of the spas in the UK, for the UK Spa Association. And I'm not giving anything away here, but again, the average, like you say, is about 5 to 8%. But there is one spa who month on month hits an average of 40% across all their therapists. So, and they're no different to anyone else. They can't say, oh, well, they're in an affluent area, because they're not. They're in the middle of nowhere. It's not because they're not linked to a hotel. They have a hotel. They're exactly the same as all these other spas. They're not charging more or anything like that, but they are constantly hitting 40%, whereas everyone else generally on average is around about, the 5 to 8%. So
as far as measuring these metrics and 40%, is that like exceptionally good, do you think, in the UK?
I think, for a day spa, definitely. You've always, like you say, you've always got a couple of superstars within a spa who are going to be hitting, higher figures, but certainly for an entire team to be hitting 40%, that is outstanding.
Yeah, the thing that always goes into my mind, I believe it was Metaesthetics magazine, but there was one of those, it was Metaesthetics or Dermoscope or something. They did a study and it said that like 90% of individuals who receive a spa treatment will go out and purchase a skincare product within 48 hours of receiving that.
Right. Okay.
So if they didn't purchase it from you, they're going to Macy's or CVS or Target or somewhere and buying some type of skincare product.
Wow.
So there's a huge opportunity for skincare
Definitely.
And I think I would imagine that the UK and the US are pretty similar in there.
Yeah, I would say so too. Definitely. Okay, so I then got number 3, which is revenue per hour. Really simple one. As a business, how much are you generating per hour that you're open for business? Okay, so this is not based on the time you spent doing treatments. This is when you're open. So effectively, your opening hours that are on your door or on your website, whatever, how much money you're bringing in per hour. And that could be yourself, that could be per therapist, that can be as a business as a whole. But basically, week on week, you want to make sure that you are either bringing in the same amount or it's increasing. You don't want to be going backwards at any point. Number 4, average treatment or service per visit. So again, this is something I would always measure. Based on one client visit, how much are you actually generating from that client? So this can often be a combination of service or treatments and retail as well. But this is something I would always target. If you're getting your clients into you to come for a treatment, this brings in all those things like, say, upgrades, selling them retail products, gift vouchers, all these other things. You can just raise by $10 the amount that every client spends when they come in. That's going to be huge amounts of money over the course of an entire year. Number 5 is the average client retail spend over the course of a year. So again, this is just looking at each of your clients and how much they're spending with you in total, because we all know it's so much easier to promote products, treatments, services, gift boxes, anything to people who are already your own clients. Mm-hmm. So again, make sure that you're seeing how much you're actually selling to people measured over a period of time and whether that's improving or going backwards. And again, these are just indicators of things within your business. Sometimes it's not going to give you the answer straight away, but just being able to quickly see that something's starting to slide backwards will make you then go, okay, something's happening. We need to look at the business, and it will kind of tell you to go and find that thing. Then we've got discounts as a percentage of revenue. Now, we all know that we really shouldn't be doing discounts, but I think we all know that we kind of do. And people do it. I think we tell ourselves, okay, well, I'll do a bit of a discount this week because we're a bit quiet and it will bring some people in and it'll be okay because I don't often do discounts. But I think we kind of lie to ourselves a little bit. And if we really look at it, we actually do discounts a lot more than we think. So one thing I tell people to measure is just keep measuring the amount of discounts you're doing as a percentage of your overall revenue, just to make sure it's never kind of getting out of control. 1 or 2% is fine. But if it starts to kind of creep above that over time and you're having to discount more and more and more to get people in, maybe there's something else going on that you need to take a look at. Now, the 7th is treatment room utilization. Now, this one comes with a big warning. I would never measure treatment room utilization. This is basically how much time your rooms, if you have more than one room, how much time your rooms are actually in use. Now, I would never measure this until you are averaging at least 70% therapist utilization across the board, because there's no point in measuring your room utilization until you know all your therapists are actually busy. And this specifically goes for if you've got more rooms than you have therapists at any one time. But that's another thing that I would look to measure. And then something I've been looking at quite recently, which is interesting, is your earnings as a multiple of your wage. So this is kind of an unusual one. It's kind of come from the hair salon world. And in the hair salon world, there's sort of this average kind of thing where you want any of your stylists to be earning a minimum of 3 times their wage, which is an interesting concept. So I've kind of been looking at this and applying it to spas and to salons and to clinics as well. And just kind of keeping an eye on what people are earning versus what they're being paid, especially if you've got people on different pay levels in your business. And it just means that we work it out as a percentage. So you make sure that everyone within your business is kind of pulling their weight and performing around about the same amount. And there, I'm again using sort of a minimum of 3 times their wage they should be bringing in revenue to the business to make sure that it's everyone's working at the same level. And it also means you can use that as a rule of thumb to decide when to bring on a new member of staff as well.
So what if you're a solo esthetician or solo beauty therapist? How do you measure what you're going to pay yourself?
Ooh, that's a good question. So, yeah, that is a good question. Again, I would make sure that you're hitting those kind of figures. And again, I don't know whether this is different in the States, but I tend to encourage my clients to pay themselves a good wage first. If they're the owner of the business, pay themselves a good wage, what they actually want to earn, but don't kind of just, dip in each month and pay yourself a different amount of money. Set yourself an actual wage. That's your wage. That's what you earn. If you've done really well and there's money left over each quarter or every year, great, pay yourself a dividend. But fix yourself a wage and treat yourself like your own member of staff. Target yourself just the same. Make sure that you're keeping consistent KPIs. Make sure you're bringing in 3 times minimum your own wage. And that way you I again use this as a way to kind of put myself to one side out of the business and manage the business as you're the CEO of yourself, even if you're the only person in the business. Mm-hmm. And it allows you to sort of take emotion out of the equation and stop yourself using those excuses of, oh yeah, I did give a discount, but that was to Mrs. Smith, who's been a client for 10 years and all these kind of things. Numbers won't lie. So they will immediately tell you if you started doing more discounts or bringing in less money versus what you're paying yourself.
Yeah, so the rule of thumb that I've seen as far as paying yourself, and you can tell me if this is similar in the UK or not, but when you're looking at your cash flow statement if you are looking at your cash flow statement, typically payroll for a team wouldn't be more than 30%.
30%. Yeah. If you're breaking that 30% rule, then you're overpaying somewhere along the line.
Yeah. And then if you're a solo, then 40 to 50%, 40% really should be where you're hanging out. But if you're a solo, you can certainly be more profitable. Not as a big spa, obviously you'll generate a lot more revenue, but I feel like as a solo, you have a little more wiggle room.
Yeah, you definitely do. I would never breach. I would say if you're going above 40% as a solo, then you potentially, in a dangerous place to be from, things you might end up having to pay at the end of the year that are unexpected. But yeah, there's definitely a bit more wiggle room if you're on your own, certainly.
Cool. Well, those are some awesome metrics. That was unexpected, but awesome. I shouldn't say unexpected because I knew I always am going to get something great from you when I talk with you, especially about numbers. So, cool. Well, so where else? I know you have your podcast. Tell us a little bit about your podcast and where people can hang out with you if they want to learn more from you.
So my podcast is called the Beauty Business Podcast, available on iTunes and all good podcast directories. So that's really the main place I hang out, a little bit like yourself. I've got a Facebook group called the Beauty Business Hackers. And I kind of the idea there is we focus on kind of fairly quick, easy to put in place business tips that can actually make a difference. So in there, I share kind of videos and things that I've recently worked on with clients that I've seen working. So I kind of distill them down a little bit and share the idea behind them and a little bit of insights into them and how you can maybe put those in place as quickly as possible, as cheaply as possible within your business to actually get some results. But yeah, everything kind of is driven from the podcast. That's where the ideas come from and people tend to contact me. So yeah, the Beauty Business Podcast is the main thing.
Awesome. So we'll link the podcast and the Facebook group below here so people can hang out with you because you obviously have so much to share for our industry. If you guys are needing help with KPIs, any kind of business strategy, Adam is an awesome resource. So be sure to listen to his podcast and hang out in his group. So Adam, thank you again for being on the show and we'll see you again soon.
Definitely. Well, before I go, because you did say to me yesterday, because I sent you a message saying, is there anything I should prep beforehand? And you said, we're just going to talk about KPIs. I was like, there's so much I want to talk about. So what I've actually done, there's a bunch of KPIs that I just went through there, those kind of 8 that I'm currently measuring, but there's a lot of maths behind there as well. And we've talked about a spreadsheet. So what I've done is I've created a kind of standard KPI spreadsheet that I can give away to your listeners if you want to.
Amazing.
And if you want that, just go to Salon Business Secrets, which I know is complicating things. That's my main website. So salonbusinesssecrets.com/Daniela. And right there, there'll be the spreadsheet that you can download. I think we've got it in Excel, Numbers, and Google Sheets format. And basically, there's some instructions that go along with that. And basically, you just put in your kind of raw figures, and it will work out those 7 or 8 KPIs for you in your business and help you track them month on month.
Amazing. Thank you so much. We'll link that. We'll be sure to link that up below the show notes as well to make it super easy for you guys. So there you go. You've got the hard work already done. Thanks to Adam. So all you guys have to do is just download that spreadsheet, pull your numbers from your software, enter it in, and voila, you are on your way to being a successful, amazing business owner.
Cool.
Very good. Thank you, Adam.
No problem at all. Thank you for having me on again.